All right, y'all, welcome back. So we finally learned here who's resurrected Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, aka now the Ghost Fist. Additionally, we also learned who has been sending these demon wraithlings after Danny as well. Now, this story here is coming out of the Undead Iron Fist with issue number 3. And where we pick things up, it starts off by saying, Danny Rand, Ghost Fist. And Danny's already throwing hands and foot here on 7th Avenue in New York City. And there are some armored bikers here while we see that voice again that's been speaking to him saying, my unrelenting force of vengeance. Many centuries ago, I too was deceived, severed into pieces. And I just think it's crazy here. We got these 3 bikers who got their chains around Danny's neck and they're just circling and circling and circling. But this voice continues. Then the loving grace of my wife resurrected me. It's why I offer you the same gift, so you may deliver your brand of retribution against a system built on lies. They thought you dead and believe their mission came to fruition. Your return is only just. Your enemies should fear you. So then in this next moment here, what happens is that we cut over to the penthouse of Rand Enterprises. And there's a voice that starts off by saying, I admire his fighting spirit, but he's a damned nuisance. Too stubborn to let go of the immortal title. I'm here waiting, no longer reformed as you once thought. The devil always prospers with his old habits. My dogs of hell siphoned from him every bit of Shaolou chi and bestowed it unto me. He should be rotting in his grave. So how is he back? So then he turns over, he looks, and he's like, my enlightened immortal weapons, crush him like the ant that he is. But bring him to me at his last dying breath. I want him to see everything I've taken away from him. His life, wealth, and power. There's nothing left for him to return to in this world. So it's with that when one of the immortal weapons responds back and says, as you wish, Lord Quan. So just for those who don't know, by the way, Lord Quan was one of the original Iron Fists. And what we find out here in this issue is that he was the one that has been unleashing the wraithlings against Danny Rand. And as you can see here, he has taken over the immortal weapons, who as you can see are now possessed here by wraithlings. And they'll reveal a few more things here about Lord Quan as we go throughout this particular issue. But what happens next here is that we jump back to Central Park and we see Danny immediately stopping here an NYPD cruiser that's been hurled towards him. So he smashes it apart, he bursts through it, and as he moves here, there's that guiding voice again that starts talking to him that says, I sense your feeling of guilt. Quan has vilified you by placing bystanders and law enforcers in your path. Demonic interventions by his wraithlings. Your mission serves a higher purpose. You are boundless to such rules. It is both he and his minions who temper with the scales of justice. Vanquish every demon soul thrown before you, so they will be rightfully condemned by me. Quan Yaozu will have a cold cell awaiting him. So what happens next here is as Danny is running away, he lands on his feet here, but before he can take another step, someone slams into him hard, sending his head crashing right into the stone. And that voice says to him, you've gone far enough, field mouse. And when he looks up, he realizes that it's actually Fat Cobra, one of the immortal weapons. And Cobra is like, yield or be crushed. But as mentioned before here, this ain't really Fat Cobra, right? This is just his body being used by a wraithling, which is why the voice tells Danny, the wraithling borrows the speed of your friend. But then Ghost Fist, being all cocky, he phases through Fat Cobra and is like, I can be quick too. So Fat Cobra realizing what's going on, he's like, yeah, you might be quick, but you can't hit and be a ghost at the same time. So it's in that moment here where Fat Cobra, he grabs Danny by the neck and he just slams him on the ground. And Cobra is just relentless. He fires a kick at him that just so happens to miss. Like Danny dodges it by like that much. Danny then gives him a leg swipe. But here's the thing, this voice that's talking to Danny has had about enough of this. He's like, bro, enough with the sparring match. Expel the demon within and then free your friend. So that's exactly what Danny tries to do. Like he charges in at Fat Cobra as the voice tells him time is of the essence. But here's what happens now. is that demon that stands up in Fat Cobra and says, "Nice try, Mouse, but getting rid of me won't be that easy." And just like that, Fat Cobra just knocks this dude far away. But then that voice comes in again and says, "So says the bearer of the eye, the Lord of Silence, the mighty Osiris." Now pay attention here to this moment, because this is important, because what happens here is that we get a flashback to months ago at the Hall of Truth in the underworld. And it's here where we see Osiris welcoming in Orson Randall. He's like, "Here with another request?" But then Danny is with Orson and he's like, "No, it's actually me who's asking." So when Orson goes to introduce Danny, Osiris just stops him and is like, "The late Iron Fist, Danny Rand, I've been expecting you." He's like, "Yo, I know who you are." So when Osiris gets close to him, he's like, "You've yet to be judged," talking to Danny Rand in the Hall of Truth. To which, of course, Danny makes some sly joke here. But then he continues on. He's like, "Before you reach a verdict, I should inform you that my death was met by outside interference." To which, of course, Osiris is like, "Yeah, as have countless other souls." But of course, as we know here about the other Iron Fists, Danny explains, he's like, "My death along with the other Iron Fists before me are part of a centuries-old scheme to siphon our chi, all for Quan Yaozu." And what some of you know already, and I'll explain this really quickly here. So Quan Zhao, as I mentioned, or Quan Yaozu, as I mentioned here, he predates all the other Iron Fists, and originally he was the champion here of Kunlun, but he eventually became corrupted, then fell out with Kunlun and was banished to the 8th city, which is like a hellish dimension here that's used as a prison for the worst beings connected to these celestial cities. And while trapped there, he basically transformed into a powerful, very vengeful entity. And essentially here, what Quan does is that he manipulates events across different centuries here to try to siphon the chi from each individual Iron Fist, which basically kind of like leads to this thing of like every Iron Fist dies at 33 or they don't live past age 33. Now I'm giving a very short amalgamated version of it here. If you want a more detailed explanation, I can probably drop it in the comments. Just let me know down below. But that's the reason why here Osiris responds back and says, "Yeah, the false death lord of the 8th city." And he's talking about Quan. So Danny, he's like, "I want to end this cycle before my successors meet the same fate." To which Osiris is like, "I'm aware of Quan's recent trespasses causing a stir, but can you be trusted as his foil?" And it's right then and there where like Osiris doesn't waste any time. He's like, "Let me look at your soul." And he just reaches into my guy's body right here. And I'm like, "Man, you ain't even taking mine on a date first. Come on." But I digress, because either way, right? Osiris is like, "Your path and intentions have been pure as a defender of justice, Danny Rand. Unlike this one right here, talking about Orson right next to him, who lived a reckless life of overindulgence." So what he does next here is that he says this. He's like, "I cannot risk abandoning my kingdom to walk among the living once more while Yaozu, I keep on screwing up that name, interferes with mortal business. But I can provide you power. If Khonshu can have a fist in the land of mortals, maybe so can I. I will put you through a trial to prove your worthiness. Your soul is now woven into this tapestry, and it will kindle as you return to your realm. Once it burns away completely, you'll be bound back to the realm of the dead." So that right now, guys, is who has been talking to Danny Rand this entire time throughout the series. So a lot of us thought that it was Ra, but it's not Ra directly. But just in case you don't know here, in terms of like who Osiris is, he's an Egyptian god, and we've seen him both here in DC and Marvel Comics before, but he is the god of the dead, the resurrection, and the underworld here. And I believe that the first time that we actually saw Osiris here was back in like a Moon Knight comic. And my understanding is that he's a descendant of Ra, who we know as a supreme sun god, which is the reason why we keep seeing Danny saying things like Ra this, Ra that, whenever he does some of his attacks. So when we jump back here to the present time, back out here in Central Park, that fight that he's having between Cobra, like Cobra's fed up at this point. He's like, "Quan says to save you at your last dying breath, but you'll be a severed ghost head when I'm done." And while he's saying this, by the way, he's trying to drown Danny Rand. But then what happens here is that Danny, he escapes. and then he swims away. But here you can tell that Osiris is kind of pissed. He's like, bro, did you just abandon your friend? Because he's like, dude, you were supposed to expel the demon from him, and then he just like takes off. But then as he's running away here, what ends up happening, first and foremost, like after Osiris has said, yo, you abandoned your friend, he's like, dude, he's fast, he can catch up. I can't waste time, I must get to Quan. But then what happens here is that another one of the immortal weapons, the Bride of Nine Spiders, well, she catches up with him and then throws all those spiders here on top of Danny Rand. And she's all teasing him. She's like, let in the Wraithling, Danny. Why don't you just join us? But then quickly here, we get another like brief flashback because we see the voice here of Osiris saying, like Thor to Odin and Moon Knight to Khonshu, you will act as my champion of justice, basically his avatar. And he says, my teachings will guide you so your clandestine mission will not fail. Give you time to hone your new skills before I let you back into the mortal world. So with that now, Danny, he's ready to kick some behind it because he's like, Quan Yaozu may have started the book of the Iron Fist, but he's not prepared for this new volume. And for a second there, I was just like, listen, Danny, watch out now. It was starting to sound like you're about to break the fourth wall, but I get it. But then Danny right here, this man goes off. He's like, of the Ghost Fist, and then he starts to light up. And this shot right here is so fire. Love this, pun intended. So then here comes the voice here of Osiris that pops in again and says, the Wraithlings have tapped into the muscle memories of the immortal weapons, anticipating what wrath an Iron Fist may bring, but you are full of surprises. So it's in that moment here where Cobra, he actually kind of gets a drop a little bit here on Danny and he like smacks him. And then there's these dogs here that start coming here after Iron Fist. And while they're lining up the immortal weapons here to see who will take on Danny next, and these dogs got, you know, Danny here by the hand, Danny's still getting this pep talk here from Osiris. He's like, they're foolish demons, too inept to grasp onto the immortal weapons of full prowess. And then Danny says, he's like kids in the driver's seat of a Lamborghini. To which Osiris responds and says, time for the pendulum to swing back against evil. So it's in this moment here where Danny grabs these two and he's like, I can play the smoke and mirrors game too. Has a mist felt the impact of a ghost? And it's here where he starts going off and he starts calling out these attacks again. He's like, ox tap. And then this dude is so savage, he stands over him. He's like, rest, Prince. And then he phases here through Dog Brother as he says, how about this trick for your sensitive ears? And he's like, toot, trumpet, pitch. And that right there damn near stops Dog Brother in his tracks. But then Bride of Nine Spiders, she kind of gets a drop on Danny again. And that gives enough time here for Fat Cobra to kind of go on the launch again. But Danny wasn't sleeping this time because he's like, sets, sidestep, swoosh. And then he gives Cobra a nice little kick right in the behind, the thap. But then once again, Bride of Nine Spiders, she got him wrapped up here by both arms. And she's like, you are trapped. But then Danny, he's like, think again. As he's like, rays of Ra. And that right there is what finishes the match. And in the aftermath of this here, Osiris is like, they had little chance in this contest. So then now Danny is ready to head on to the mission at hand here. As Osiris is like, your hereditary kingdom is just ahead, where Quan awaits at your former throne, with another familiar standing before him. And Danny was so close, man, but then these NYPD police cars just come right on in. And then there's this voice that says, stop right there, vigilante. And Danny's like, no. And by the back of that head, you already know who this is. But the voice says, you think you can get away with tearing up my city to get Quan Yaozu? Not on my watch. And then he's like, your mayor says, arrest him. And yes, that is Luke Cage, possessed by a Wraithlet. And if there is one thing that will slow down Danny for real, it is 100% Luke Cage. And listen, Luke is a problem now, but we haven't really seen Luke get into any sort of fights in the most recent years in comics. So if we don't get to see this big ass brawl, I'm gonna be a little bit sad about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got to see him throw some good hands here. Are y'all looking forward to that? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, if you're a little bit lost here on this particular series, we do have a playlist that is right down to the left here on the screen, or to the right, I should say, here on the screen. Also, if there's some things that you need answers to, leave it down below in the comments and I'll be happy to kind of circle back to that too as well. Check out our links that are down below in the description where you can join our Discord. You can also take a look at our website here, and where you can also support Keepin' It Comic either through memberships or through Patreon, or by purchasing our merch. Like and subscribe to the channel here, and until next time, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye!